there's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
So before Tom turned 2, he was in the hospital for 14 months. Yeah, so that's a really long time to be not in control, not able to pick up your child when they cry. They have all sorts of things done to them which are there to keep them alive and healthy and protect them. But when they're getting painful needles and tubes and many operations and can't do basic things, it's hard.
Happy New Year! Welcome to another episode in your summer series of Well. Today, we are kicking off 2026 with a guest whose story is going to absolutely squeeze your little heart in more ways than one. Imagine this, you've welcomed a perfectly healthy little baby boy, only to be told 10 days later that he suffered heart failure after catching a very, very common virus. That was the reality for Catie. Her son Tom was just a precious little newborn when an infection left him fighting for his life. And the trauma that caused to his little heart meant that he needed to be kept alive for months by a whopping 160-kilo machine known as a Berlin heart, all while they waited for the impossible to happen, for a donor match to appear. But waiting for a heart transplant is this unique kind of limbo, because while you're waiting for a miracle for your own child, you know the whole time that requires another family to face the worst tragedy of their lives. Catie joins us today to share the harrowing yet incredibly hopeful journey of the boy that they called Tiger Tom, the life-saving reality of organ donation, and what life looks like now for this precocious 9-year-old boy. Catie, thank you so much for joining us to share both yours and Tom's story today. Welcome to Well.
Thank you so much.
We are going to get into the nitty-gritty of organ donation today, but I guess I want to take us back to the very beginning of this journey and the moment that you realised or were told that there was an issue with Tom's heart.
Yes, there was a long journey for Tom, and when he was tiny, actually. He was born healthy, but then just caught a common virus. And at 10 days old, he crashed and got helicoptered from Canberra, where we lived, in the hospital, up to Sydney. And basically, between the virus and his autoimmune system kicking into overdrive, he suffered meningoencephalitis, which is swelling of the brain and the brain lining, and also dilated cardiomyopathy was the result to his heart. So basically, that means it was quite large and floppy and not pumping enough to support life in his body. So he was kept alive by machines, and that's the first trauma to his heart, I guess.
I can't even imagine a mum of a 10-day-old baby, what that experience would have been like for you. You're in the middle of one of the most life-changing experiences a woman can go through. Your hormones are going wild, your body is still recovering, and then you have to face this with him on top of that. Where was your head when all of this was happening?
Yeah, well, I was very much looking forward to being with him and enjoying the newborn phase. He is our baby number 4. So I was desperately looking forward to that time being at home with him and my 2-year-old at the time. And then we were geographically separated as well because they couldn't look after him in Canberra, so I couldn't be with my other children. And yeah, they told us he might pass away numerous times. They said he might not be worth resuscitating because his brain output was so low. And yeah, it was a bit of a struggle.
Okay, you say this with a big smile on your face now because the outcome is good now, but gosh, at the time, that must have been so, so difficult.
Yeah, I think I'm smiling because I don't want to cry. The outcome 2 years later was amazing. He was kept alive by a Berlin heart, which basically is a pump that goes from outside his body into his aorta and left ventricle in his heart and pumps it for him because his heart was not able to do that, and kept him alive for many months until we waited for the perfect match that the doctors were able to provide him.
So the Berlin heart, it's a fair contraption, right? So you have this tiny little baby hooked up to this machine. that's keeping him alive. I know when I was a mum of a tiny infant, you spend a lot of time monitoring their every second. Are they okay? Are they fed? Are they breathing? Are they like all those things? You have that like extra layer of, is his heart still pumping? How do you mentally fortify yourself to monitor a little baby who's being kept alive by a machine?
The Berlin heart up until that time, so before 18 months and after the first big hospital stint, he was able to come home because his heart was sort of bumbling along enough to help him pump blood around his body and do those things, but wasn't strong enough to prevent. So, for example, when one of the siblings would get a cold, we had to then remove them from the house, or we would go from the house up to my parents because he couldn't be near someone with a cold because his heart couldn't cope with that extra pressure.
God, and kids bring home colds like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. And the cardiologists were expecting him to cardiac arrest because his heart was just bumbling along. So all that trepidation until he crashed again when he wanted to start moving and crawling, his heart wasn't strong enough. So then he crashed again and we got offered palliative care or to fly him to Melbourne to see if he was able and suitable for a heart transplant. So that's when he was kept alive then by the Berlin heart for months. So up until that point, it was very stressful waiting for something bad to happen to try and intervene. But then once the Berlin heart was inserted, although it's this huge, big 160-kilo box and it's quite confronting to look at, having it protruding out of his body, it was actually the most reassuring time because we weren't relying on his heart to keep him alive anymore. The machine was. So actually it was a gift. It comes with its own stresses and chances of stroke and things. But up until that point, it was the most relief we felt in terms of, well, he's in the right place if anything goes wrong and, yeah, it's doing the job that his heart can't do.
I mean, you've got 3 other children who are experiencing this alongside you. And then you've got a little baby who, as you mentioned, wants to start hitting milestones, wants to move, wants to roll, wants to walk, wants to, do all of those things. How do you have these conversations with your other children and with a little boy who's desperate to grow up already? He feels like maybe you had to put everyone in a bit of a holding pattern for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Our older 3 children are resilient, I think, through this journey that was quite long and hasn't finished either. It continues, but they are amazing little people who are, 7 years later, quite big. But yeah, they have done remarkably well through a really hard period. We moved several times. So Melbourne is the national paediatric heart transplant location. So we moved again for that so we could be together. And family time is absolutely precious to us. So we have chosen to make the most of life.
Do you think people outside of your family understood where you guys were at? I know, having had a nephew who's experienced some major health issues, sometimes people in the short term are very understanding and very supportive, but when that health journey becomes a long one, it becomes harder for people to continue to be that support. Did you find that?
No, thankfully. It was a very long period. So before Tom turned 2, he was in the hospital for 14 months. Sorry.
No, take your time.
Yeah, so that's a really long time to be not in control, not able to pick up your child when they cry. They have all sorts of things done to them which are there to keep them alive and healthy and protect them. But when they're getting painful needles and tubes and many operations and can't do basic things, it's hard. But our older children have done well and we are at home now and Tom's at school and running around and family and friends have been very supportive. So we're very blessed.
What's it like to exist on a transplant list? Because it's such a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it will potentially save your child's life, but it means the death of another, which is the harsh reality of that. What's it like to exist in that space before he's given that opportunity? Yeah,
that is the crux of it, I think, that you want them to recover without, if possible, needing a transplant because of what it means for another family. And for a child, obviously, that means another family has to say goodbye to their child. That's the awful but also beautiful part of it, that someone in such a traumatic place chooses to gift another child with a chance to live when theirs isn't able to.
Do you remember the moment the call came in?
Yeah, so we were living in hospital. Tom was there 24/7, so we were in his cardiac ward room that we had set up with tons of tigers. I gave him an alliteration name, Tiger Tom, because he fought so hard to live when we were told so many times that he would not. So we were in his room and trying to play, and in walked, normally his nurse would come in often or his cardiologist, but at that moment his cardiologist, consultant and fellow and the nurse transplant coordinator and his on-shift nurse all walked.
Oh, so an army of people have entered the room, right?
So all four came in together and I instantly knew what that meant. So it's overwhelmingly wonderful and sad and scary for yet another long surgery all at the same time. Yeah, so that was the moment.
What age was Tom when that moment happened?
Just before he was 2.
Do you think he had any understanding about what was actually happening in that moment?
No, I don't
No?
actually. He was too young, but we explained that he is having an operation and we'll be there with him and waiting for him and can't wait to hold him afterwards.
Are you allowed to learn anything about the donor that Tom's heart has come from?
No, in Australia it's kept very separate, so neither family knows about the other, but we were able to, through Donate Life, write an anonymous and generic without providing the details to say thank you. So we sent that card after Tom's transplant to say thank you that our child gets to experience life because of their sacrifice.
What was the transplant surgery like and the recovery like for Tom?
I think it was about an 11.5-hour surgery.
Mm.
And in the middle of the night, there's a small window when organs are available and they need to be used. So that happened overnight. So Tom's Berlin heart and own heart were taken out on one day and midnight passed and he was granted the new one wee hours of the next. That's just when the surgery happened to fall. And then actually Tom didn't do well initially. After having his chest closed again, they had to reopen it and do some manual CPR and monitor and just let his body calm for a few days. But we were able to see him while he was post-surgery, but not awake. And then about a month, he actually suffered a couple of illnesses during that time in the month straight after transplant. So he was quite unwell, unfortunately, but his donor heart is beautifully strong and healthy. And after that month and the 2 sicknesses that came at once passed, he was able to then recover quickly, which he'd not done before without a healthy heart. And then we were able to go home, which was absolutely spectacular to be the 6 of us at home together. And then you stay semi-isolated or in a bubble for 100 days, which we had already been in a bubble his whole life because his heart wasn't strong enough to socialise and do everyday things like go to the shops. And after that, we celebrated with tons of hiking and beach exploring and bike riding. They're our loves as a family. And yeah, now he's fully in the mix with germs at school and living life. So it's great.
Catie, do you remember the day, and perhaps this day has never arrived, but do you remember the day that you didn't worry about Tom's heart?
Not for a very long time. I think it was ingrained, and there was a lot of fear during the first 2 years. So that took a long time actually to reintegrate into public spaces and not worrying about having to prevent or catch a cardiac arrest. And we have meds every day still and checkups often. But as time goes on and we can enjoy normal life, that fear has faded. So we just make the most of every minute.
And how has Tom's understanding of his heart situation evolved as he's gotten older? Because he was so young when it happened and you said he didn't fully grasp what was going on. What's that been like for him as he's gotten older and really understood what he's been through and what it's taken for him to still be here with us?
I don't think he sees it from our perspective. He's 9 now, so his perspective is very different. He's just, oh yeah, and happy to get on with life, which is beautiful. That they don't have the worry and that he's living life to the max, cracking jokes, trying to keep us all entertained. So I think that's a blessing in itself that kids don't necessarily, well, at that young age anyway, don't worry about that sort of thing.
What does the long term look like for him? Because anyone who's had any kind of transplant knows that there is a risk of graft v host or potential complications. What does long term look like for him?
Yeah, so when we were offered to go on the transplant list for Tom, it came with a 15-year life expectancy on average. So some people obviously live much longer than that and others not. There are complications with the medication that causes other health problems potentially. So you are having the speech, this chance of a new life, but also they're giving you all the risks and possible complications and that. So that's quite tough to hear, but you're desperate for a chance at life. So medicine's only getting better. And Tom, thank God, has been very receptive to his body, has been receptive to his medication, and he is healthy and robust. And we just have to live in hope and knowing that medicine is improving, processes are improving. At the time, only 2% of heart transplant recipients receive a second one. So that's confronting. So that's why we just make the most of every moment and know that things are always improving in the medical space.
Catie, what would you want someone listening to this who is not a registered organ donor right now, maybe is on the fence about it or maybe just hasn't really thought about it that much and hasn't taken the steps to get themselves on any kind of list, what do you want them to take away from this conversation?
We're in such a wonderful country and many, many people are waiting for organ donations or tissue donations. And out of all the people that pass away in Australia, only about 2% of people are able to donate because of the way in which they pass. So there are many more people waiting for organs than are able to receive them. And as awful as it sounds, we don't need our organs when we pass, when our time is up. So those that are desperate to keep on living, it would be wonderful to be able to help them out. And yeah, again, there are so few people that are able to do it. So it would be great if people could sign up to donatelife.org.au because it only takes literally less than 1 minute. Everyone is time poor. So it's a very quick way of becoming registered. But also the other important thing is to discuss it with your family. So even those who consent and register still need to discuss it with their family because the family are the ones who will be making the decisions should the awful thing happen.
Just finally, Catie, what do you say to those families who have said yes and donated organs? And of course, that includes the family that donated Tom's heart. What do you say to them for the gifts that they've given to those who do want to keep living.
We are so grateful that our thanks is beyond my capacity in words, what they have provided for families like us in desperate need and just wanting to live and love our family members. So thank you.
Catie, thank you so much for sharing yours and Tom's story with us today. We're really grateful that he's still with us and being a precocious 9-year-old, not caring about anything other than, I don't know, saying 6, 7, which is what I seem to all be saying these days, whatever it might be. Thank you so much for sharing his story, and we wish you guys all the best in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today for what was absolutely an emotional roller coaster, but a really important one. Catie's message is very clear. Medical miracles happen, but they often rely on the generosity of others during their absolutely darkest moments. If little Tiger Tom's story has moved you today, please take this as your reminder to head to donatelife.org.au. As Catie said, it takes less than a minute to register. As always, if you have any health concerns or questions we haven't addressed here, please check in with your own doctor to make sure that you're getting the right advice for you. Join us on Tuesday for another episode in our summer series of Well. We'll be going to med school to find out how your menstrual cycle affects your tolerance to alcohol, and Dr. Mariam answers a listener's question about some skid mark concerns. Well is produced by me, Claire Murphy, and our senior producer, Sally Best, with audio production by Scott Stronach, video production by Julian Rosario, and social production by Ellie Moore. Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we've recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and the Wonnarua people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.